Right then, here we are again, and I'm ready to start, I think. The last few weeks, months actually, we've had no problem with the sound, which has been strange. But anyway, again, if there is any problem with the sound, could you let me know on the comments section? Apologies, I wasn't here last week. I've not been in best of health recently. A bit trying, but hopefully it should be all right today. We'll see how we go anyway. Yeah, we if you can cast your minds back 2 weeks, we've been talking about chapter 17, and I've mentioned that in the chapter 16 and in chapter 17, Krishna starts to give us direct instruction related to very much to the here and now, how we should live our lives. He's moved on really from discussing the more esoteric topics such as the nature of the self, the Atman, the nature, the divine identity of himself, and the way that the supreme deity creates and controls the world. And he's now giving us direct instructions really about how we should and should not live our lives. We saw that particularly in chapter 16, but the same basic theme is being carried on here. And in the verses that we're looking at, Krishna's talking about food. He talked about the performance of ritual, the yajna, and now he's talking about tapas, which is usually understood as a form of austerity. And he's analysing each of these in a threefold division based on the three gunas of sattva, rajas and tamas. So we've already discussed what he says about food under these three headings. We've also seen what he says about yajna, the performance of the ritual. Now he's moved on to tapas, but before he analyzes tapas under the three headings of sattva, rajas and tamas, the gunas, he's defining exactly what he means by tapas. And as I said before, tapas usually means quite harsh austerity, mortification of the body in various ways, harsh fasts or adopting difficult postures and things like that. But Krishna said early on in, I think, verses 5 and 6, he really doesn't appreciate this kind of harsh bodily infliction on yourself. And he's redefining tapas in these verses in a way which I think is very interesting. And it's not to do with causing personal physical distress, but it's about the way we live, conduct ourselves, particularly in relation to the others. So the threefold definition of tapas, before he gets onto the analysis in terms of the gunas, is tapas of the body, physical tapas, what you do with the body, which we talked about last time, tapas of the speech, which we're going to hear now, and then tapas of the mind. And this is a threefold definition of tapas, which carries it away. Okay, you can hear, thank you. Carries us away from the perhaps what would be the more usual idea of tapas as this harsh austerity, standing in that position, or fasting for 2-3 days or something like that. Reminds me of Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu. They've got a wonderful stone carving, which is believed to be either Arjun performing tapas to gratify Shiva, or else perhaps the descent of the Ganga. I think King Bhagirath performed austerity, but there's an image of him standing with his arms there, life-size carving on a rock, magnificent. Anyway, Krishna doesn't define tapas in that way, but he's already said it's the way we conduct ourselves physically, showing respect to those who should be respected, etc. Now then, in verse 15, which is where we're picking up from, chapter 17, verse 15, he talks about, well, let's listen to the verse. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayat svadhyaya chaiva vangmayam tapa uchyate So the key words, or the explanatory words for this verse is the last phrase, Vangmayan tapa uchite. Uchite, it is said to be, and tapas is Vangmayam. And Vangmaya means, this means tapas related to the speech. So this is what this verse is about. Tapas relating to the speech. Okay, and how does Krishna explain this? He does it by a number of words and phrases. First of all, we have anudvega karam vakyam. Vakyam is speech. So the speech, which is tapas of words, of the voice, is anudvega karam. Udvega means a disturbance. It can mean a current, a rushing current going over rapids. But in this case, obviously, it means a disturbance, a tribulation of the mind. And kara means causing. But this is anudvega karam, never causing any tribulation. Speech, vakya, which never causes any tribulation. In other words, when we speak, address or write on social media to be read by another person, we should do it in such a way that doesn't cause any distress to the person who's the recipient of our words. Not at all. Never any insults, any real harsh criticisms or anything like that. And so much, isn't it, of contemporary discourse, even when it's serious subjects that are being debated. So often it sinks down into people thinking, how can I disturb my ideological opponent? What words can I say that will make that of my opponent feel distress? Krishna says just the opposite. Even if you disagree with someone, even if you disagree quite radically, state your disagreement, but do it in such a way that is not insulting or demeaning. Anudvega karam, never causing a disturbance to the people you address. No angry words, no harsh words, no criticisms, vicious condemnations, none of that. Even to your own children, I think Krishna includes there. Obviously, instruct them, guide them, but not in such a way as is going to cause them upset and distress. Anudvega karam vakyam. What else does he say about this Vangmayam tapa? Well, satyam, speak the truth. It's very obvious, isn't it? Don't tell lies. Someone should speak to our politicians perhaps about that. Satyam, yeah. And it's interesting, Satya, because you might say, well, sometimes if you speak the truth to someone, that can be udvega karam, that can cause disturbance. But interesting, and I was trying to find the reference somewhere, I couldn't find it, but in one of the Puranas that I was reading recently, there was a discussion of Satya, and it said there that Satya, truthfulness, doesn't just mean the factual veracity of what you say, the fact that it is true, but you also have to consider the consequences of your words and your motivation as well. So if you find out something about someone, or find out a fact that you know will hurt someone you don't like, and you tell them, that's satya, perhaps you might think, well, I only told them the truth, I was honest, but your intent was malicious, and therefore it's not satya. That's what the Purana said. Must try and find that reference again. I'm always doing that, just reading books that I'm interested in, and then seeing something and thinking, well, that's interesting, and then forgetting where it was. But I'm sure I read that. Satya isn't just about veracity, it's also about the consequences, and therefore satya is closely related to ahimsa as well, where even when you speak the truth, think about whether that truth is going to harm another person. It's difficult to find the balance, but that should always be kept in mind as well. And Krishna therefore relates satyam, I think, to the next two words he uses, priya hitam. Now priya, many of you will know, mean, we've had priya a number of times. Yomad bhaktaha same priyaha. Krishna declares that one who is devoted to him, he is beloved by Krishna. So it means love, or it means pleasing as well. And I think both senses are here, that your words should be loving words, kind words, pleasing words, gentle words, words of consolation, words of encouragement, words that make people feel good, positive, enlivened, gentle, kind words that you know will leave a positive impression, that will, I don't know, maybe, brighten up someone's day or something, that sort of thing. Ask concern for people, discuss their issues with them. Priya, words of love, words of kindness, words that are pleasing to the hearer. And hita means beneficial. Help people, guide them, give them good, solid advice without any motivation of what will be good for that person. So this is, I think, a wonderful instruction that Krishna gives us here, and it's something that I try to think about whenever I speak to family members, friends, children, anything. And I tell them as well, whenever you speak, always keep that in mind. Never say anything that will cause distress. Anudvegakaram. Speak truthfully, honestly, but with kindness, with love, with concern, and speak in a way that guides people properly, that helps and assists. Satyam priya hitam chayat. And one more thing Krishna gives, svadhyaya bhyasana. Abhyas of Svadhyaya. Svadhyaya, a number of different meanings. It's mentioned in yogic texts, Yoga Sutras, and it's often understood as meaning self-examination, Svadhyaya. But clearly here Krishna doesn't mean it in that sense, because it's Vang Mayam Tapas. It's of the voice. It's an enunciation of sound. And I think therefore we can understand that Svadhyaya, what Krishna means by Svadhyaya here is recitation of the Vedas, chanting sacred texts, mantras, etc. This also is tapas of the voice, and I know a lot of you will do this sometimes. Very relaxing and maybe even purifying to recite sacred texts. Triyambakam yajamahe sugandhim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bandhanam mrityumukshaya mamritat. That's the Triyambakam mantra from the Yajurveda. It's a prayer for life and good health dedicated to Triyambaka, to Shiva. Anyway, just an example there. That is also, that I was just doing there, a bit of Vangmayam Tapas as an example. Svadhyaya Abhyas. But Abhyas, of course, means regular recitation of it, a daily routine or a routine of some sort. Svadhyaya Abhyasanam Chaiva Vangmayam Tapa Uchate. Really, really highly instructive there. So that's tapas of the speech. Well, what about tapas of the mind? And again, let's see what Krishna says about that. Manaha prasadaha saumyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhava sangshadirithyetat tapo manasam uchyate. So that's the key phrase again. This is tapo manasa, the tapas of the mind. This is what is said to be. Uchyate means is said. Passive, if you're interested in grammar, it means it is said to be. This is said to be tapo manasa, tapas of the mind. Okay, what is it? Manaha prasadaha. We've had that before, right, in chapter 2, and I think it's mentioned also in Yoga Sutras. It's a yogic term, because prasada does mean grace or mercy, and any of you who go to the temple will be given flowers or foods, and that's referred to as prasada, the grace of the murti in the temple. But here prasad has another meaning, and it means serenity, peacefulness, tranquility. Manaha prasadaha. And saumyatvam, again we've had saumya before, and actually it's interesting, when Arjun had seen the Vishvaroop, the Ugraroop as he described it, the terrible, fearful form, his request to Krishna then was, show me your saumya vapu, your form which is saumya, and it means really gentle, benign, benevolent. Saumyattvam means benevolence of mind, so that as you go through your daily life, you're not filled with angry, harsh thoughts. Why isn't it, particularly if you may be in the car driving, it's very easy to slip into hateful thoughts about your fellow motorists. But Krishna says the tapas of the mind is saumyattvam. Be gentle, be forgiving, be tolerant. Don't cultivate harsh thoughts of mind. It's wonderful, isn't it? Krishna guides us. And I know it's difficult, isn't it? Because I was speaking to someone the other day and she was saying to me, well, I can manage it probably with my body and I can manage it with my words if I bite my tongue, but banishing all sort of harsh thoughts from the mind, that's rather a difficult thing, because people, things are irritating. But Krishna says manaha prasadaha saumyattvam, gentle, benign, benevolent outlook on the world. Manaha prasadaha saumyattvam maunam. Mauna means silence. I don't think Krishna means that you just stop talking to people, but I think he does mean a little gravitas, not jibber-jabbering all the time long, constant gossip, choosing your words carefully, and as well, not because it's manaha tapa, it's tapas of the mind. It means not filling your mind with trivia. I think that's what it means. Be a little serious in one's thoughts. Focus on the world and the important things in life. Maunam. Atma vinigraha is self-control, self-mastery. Atma, obviously, here doesn't mean the spiritual Atma, but it just means yourself. Self-control, which means that you control your thoughts, control your thought processes. Don't be overly intoxicated with self-importance. I think means having the power to observe yourself as you observe others. Recognise your own silliness and stupidity when you're being a little bit pompous or self-important, or even when you're being a bit harsh. And then if you can watch it and observe yourself a little bit detached, then it becomes somewhat easier to moderate your behaviour. Atma vinigraha, self-control. Maunam atma vinigraha. Bhava sangshuddhiritiye. Bhava sangshuddhir. Bhava means, again, your disposition, your nature, your way of living. And sangshuddhi means purity. So, again, it means don't let your mind be filled with anger, hatred, malice, ill will. All of that is impurity, ashuddhir. Sangshuddhi is purity. Make your mind be pure, gentle, kind, benevolent. That's the real emphasis that Krishna is giving us here on how we should direct our thoughts as we look upon the world and all the living beings who live with it. Look with kindness, compassion, gentleness, and a longing for to benefit all living beings. This is tapas of the mind, because the general mood is that perhaps we're more familiar with is that it's passion running here and there, frustration, irritation, people bothering us, criticism of others. But what Krishna's urging us to do here is to do this tapas, manaha prasadaha, saumyattvam, maunam, atma vinigraha, bhava sangshuddhir. Make our thoughts pure, ideas gentle, be restrained, not always filling our heads with trivia, things like that. Tapomanasam uchite, that's what tapomanasam is. So Krishna's now given us a threefold definition of tapas, and now in the next 3 verses, making a total of 6 in all on tapas. So where are we up to? 14, 15, 16, I think this is 17, 18, 19. He analyzes tapas again, as he has been doing, using the 3 gunas as his tool of analysis: Satwik tapas, Rajasik tapas, and Tamasik tapas. That's right. Okay, Shraddhaya Paraya yuktam, isn't it? Shraddha Pariya Yuktam Tapas Tat Trividam Narai. So tapas, as he's explained, is Trividam, is undertaken. Yes, Yuktam. I think that's right, isn't it? I think I've thought about that. I think perhaps it means. Let me just check that. Yeah, Shraddha Pariya. No, Taptam. Austerity, which is practiced as austerity. Tapas. Shraddha Pariya. It's undertaken with great faith. Okay, this is, and again, if we go through the verse, Shraddha Pariya Taptam Tapas Tat Trividam Narai Apalakankshabir Juktai Satvikam Parichakshite. So Krishna is starting off here talking about Satvika tapas. And how does he find that then? Okay, well, Shraddha Pariya Taptam. It's executed with Shraddha Pariya, with the highest faith. Harking back a little bit to Arjun's initial inquiry about Shraddha, about faith. So this tapas that you undertake should be done with great faith, great commitment to it, rigorously. Shraddha Pariya Taptam Tapas Tat Trividam Narai is undertaken, performed, taptam, in the three ways that Krishna's analysed, with the body, with the speech, and with the mind, by people, by men. Narai. Apalakankshabir Juktai. That's right. It's undertaken. Now, Yuktai might be taken as a reference to yoga, performed as a part of one's yoga endeavours. And I think if we look back on those three verses that we've had before about the body, speech and the mind, we can perhaps recognise some similarities with the yamas and niyamas, and therefore when Krishna uses the word yukta here, it may be he's drawing some connection with yoga practice. So Shraddha Pariya Taptam Tapas Tat Trividam Narai Apalakankshabir Juktai. It's undertaken, it's performed. Who by? Apalakankshyans. Kankshin means one who is desirous, one who wants something, and pala is fruit, result, wanting to gain something from it. But apalakankshin is one who has no desire for the results. So, and that is the Satwik tapa. And again, I made this point a couple of weeks ago. What we can see here is the way that Krishna is linking up sattva, the Satwik practices. We had it with the Satwik yajna, it's the same thing there. And here again, performing this action, but doing it without any desire for personal gain. You do the tapas that Krishna has prescribed for us in the previous verses, not because you're thinking I'll get good karma, I'll be elevated, or people will admire me, or anything like that, any of the results that we might get, but apalakankshibi, it's performed by persons who have no such desires. They undertake the threefold tapas Krishna's given us simply because it's the right thing to do. It's the proper way to do it. And again, you can see there, I'm sure, the link to the earlier teachings on karma yoga, which is a spiritual path. So in all cases here, where Krishna's giving us the Satwik process, that's very closely intertwined with karma yoga. So it's not just about the way we live in the world, as I said earlier. It is about that, obviously, but let's not fool ourselves. This is also deeply spiritual. Just as Krishna said, the karma yoga in chapters 2 and 3 leads us to the highest spiritual goals. So the way that we live and interact and speak and think about other people, yes, it is the proper way to live in the world. It is the right way to do things, but it's also an essential element of everything spiritual. It's an essential part of yoga, of chanting, of bhakti, of all the spiritual things that we may or may not do. These threefold tapas is an essential prerequisite, an essential element of them, because it is, when it's done properly, when it's done from a Satwik perspective, it's the same as karma yoga, which is it's done without desires. What does Krishna say in chapter 2? Karmanyevadikaraste mapaleshu kadachana. You should never seek the fruits of you should perform your actions, karmanyevadikaraste mapaleshu, but don't go after the results of action. Don't do it desirelessly, thinking what's in it all for me. And it's exactly the same point that Krishna makes here. Apalakankshabir, by those who do not seek results. So you can see quite clearly Krishna's linking up the sattva gun with the karma yoga. So yeah, sattva gun, as with all the gunas, is ultimately a part of the bondage within this world, but also we should understand the positive side of sattva guna, that it has simultaneously a liberating and a binding force, because it's karma yoga. Sattva is imbued with karma yoga and the liberating force of karma yoga. Apalakankshabir juktai. What is that? Let's think again. Shradya paraya taptam tapas tatri vidamnarai apalakankshabir juktai satvikam parichakshase. It's understood as satvik. Satvikam parichakshate. Now then, of course, we move on. What about the rajas tapas, if you like, raja tapa? Okay, satkara mana pujartam tapodambena chayavayat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasamchalam adjuvam. So this is rajas tapas. Okay, what does Krishna say? Satkara mana puja artam. Arta means the reason, the purpose why it's undertaken. So this, remember, is tapas, as previously defined, but driven by raja. So in that circumstance, it is the reason that it's undertaken, the motive is satkara mana puja. Satkara means respect, so that you get respect, people look up to you. Mana is pride, arrogance. Puja is, of course, worship, so you want to be worshipped. And the whole thing, I think the point Krishna's making here is that we may conduct ourselves in the manner of saints and sadhus, perhaps. We may adopt that guise, but we're not doing it without desire. We're not doing it just because it's right and proper. In the back of our mind, something is telling us, yeah, people will look up to me here. They'll recognize what a righteous person I am. People will admire me. People may even touch my feet. I will build up a reputation as a pious man, and that's rajas. Yeah. I remember years ago I used to give talks in Preston. I was invited at the Hindu Centre, and at the end of one session a man used to bring his little boy, and the little boy came up, and I was sitting at the front talking, and they put a flower garland around my neck, bowed down, touched my feet, and part of me, the better part of me, this is ridiculous, I shouldn't be given respect by me. But another little part of me was saying, actually, this feels pretty good, actually. I kind of like this, getting the respect. And that was rajas. Yeah, you do the right thing, but why? Sakaramana pujartam, because you're seeking sakara, to build a reputation. Perhaps as a very learned pandit. Nobody is quite as learned a pundit as I am. Mana, pride, very arrogant pride, looking down on the lesser teachers, etc. Or mana, puja, ultimately being worshipped, revered by others. Sakaramana pujartam tapodumbena chayavayat. This tapas, which is performed with dumba. Dumba can be deceit, dishonesty, or again it can be arrogance, pride. It means both things, and both meanings are clearly relevant here. It can be done deceitfully. In other words, you get a lot of people who, I shouldn't say that, not a lot, but you get some people who make the big show of piety, very serene, very saintly in their demeanour, but when the door closes, there's a different side of the personality that comes out, and that's dumber. Deceitfully, they put on a show of displaying holiness and sanctity and purity and righteousness, but really it's just materialism is lurking underneath and just seeking reputation, adoration, puja. There, yes, Sakaramana pujartam tapudam bena chaiviat Kriate tadia proctum. That's how it's performed. It's undertaken in this world. It's undertaken here. Proctum. This is said to be Rajasa tapas. And it's also then two words at the end. Rajasam chalam adruvam. It's chala and it's adruva. Chala means flickering, temporary. So if it's not real, if it's not genuine, but if it's dumba, if it's just a show, a display, then it will be chala. It will be flickering, unsteady. It will be apparent some of the time, but then there will be times when it slips and the reality comes through, that it's not quite as saintly as the image that one was projecting, isn't it? The history of religion and spirituality is littered with dumba, isn't it? People who put on a great show of real saintliness, but lurking underneath there was something rather less pleasant there, kind of real ambition, wanting to get money, donations, collecting, or gaining power over people. So it's temporary. Chala. Adruva means something similar. Dhruva means firm, steady, unmoving. It's the name of the pole star, actually, which is called Dhruva because all the other stars rotate around it, but the Dhruva star stays fixed in one place. So this Rajas tapas is adruva. It's unsteady. It won't last because it's not rooted in the heart. It's superficial. And you can't keep pretending all of the time. The real Dhruva tapas is when it's genuine. It's really a part of you. It's what you are. Then you don't even have to think about doing it. It just comes naturally to you. You're naturally generous, naturally compassionate, naturally benevolent. But when you're putting on a show of it, you can't keep it up all the time. So therefore, Krishna says, Rajasam chalam adruvam. Okay, and last and least, we have tapas, which is tamasik. And what does Krishna say about that? Mudagrahen atmanoyat pidya kriyate tapaha. Parasyot sadhanartam va tamasam udahitam. So this is said to be, is considered to be udahita tamasa. And what does that consist of then, this tapas? Mudagrahen atmanoyat pidya. So based on mudagraha means concepts which are just stupid, foolish, ridiculous. Mudha. Graha means grasping, but here of course it means mentally grasping. So due to this mental grasping, mudagrahen atmanoyat pidya. Now Krishna here has gone back to his previous criticism, because pidya means with pain, causing distress. And what is it causing distress to? Atmanoyat pidya, causing distress to yourself. He might mean possibly Atman, the spiritual self, but I think it just means mortifying oneself, doing harm to oneself, damaging yourself, by fasting for 4 or 5 days or something like that. Really harsh austerities is atmanoyat pidya. That's damaging to oneself. And why would you do that? Mudagrahena, because your ideas all confused. You've got stupid ideas in your head, and therefore you undertake practices which are atmanopidya, which are damaging to oneself, damaging your body, damage your mind. That's what the Buddha said, isn't it? He undertook that harsh tapas, according to his biographies. And at the end of it, he thought, all this is doing to me is making me ill and weak-minded there. So Atmanoyakpedia, that's what this does, because you've got stupid ideas in your head that somehow standing on one leg for, I don't know, a week will make you spiritually enlightened. No, that's a mudagraha. That is a silly idea. It's not like that. Well, that's what Krishna says anyway. Mudagrahina Pidiya kriyate tapaha, the tapas that's done in that way. Pidiya kriyate tapaha parasya utsadanartam va, or else va parasya utsadanarta. Artha again, for the reason of. What other reason could you have for doing it? Parasya utsadana. Utsadana means to damage, destroy. Destroy what? Parasya, of others, for the destruction, for causing harm to others. Yes. Parasya utsadanartam va tamasam udaritam. And we do read in Puranas, Mahabharata as well, Ramayana, about people who undertake these harsh tapas, and the aim is to cause harm to others, like Ravana, for example, is one example. Hiranyakashipu in the story of the Narasimha avatar, again he performed this harsh austerity, unbelievable harsh austerity as well. And why were they doing it? Parasya utsadanartha, because they wanted to gain triumph, to vanquish other people, in many cases the devas, the gods. And it also can be sometimes that people in this world, the people around us, undertake quite a restricted lifestyle, but they're doing it because they want to gain triumph. They deprive themselves of simple pleasures simply because they want to gain power over others. It's all the same thing again. Parasyut saranartam va. It's undertaken in order to cause harm to other living beings, other people. I think probably Krishna has in mind here the stories of individuals like Ravana, etc., when he uses that phrase parasyut saranartam va. So that's tapas defined as being threefold in a new way that is, I think, almost unique to Krishna. That's his idea, and it carries some weight, certainly for me anyway. It makes an awful lot of sense. And then it's analysed under the triple heading of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So that section is finished. 6 verses and not just the 3. Now the last category that Krishna analyses in this chapter, he does more of it, the same thing in chapter 18, is dhanam, charity. And let's start off on that. So what about charity, the giving of charity? Now charity is an interesting idea, and I think there's 2 approaches to 2 understandings of charity that we get. I've just been doing some writing on the Mahabharata, and in the Anushasan part of the Mahabharata, there's about 20 chapters devoted to dhanam, giving charity, and the ways it should be done, etc. And there's 2 points that come out. One of them is just charity, giving as an overt expression of one's compassion and concern for the condition of others, but also there's dhanam as a ritual act, and quite a few of the chapters talk about the great positive results the giver of charity gets in the sense of karma, and it makes dhanam a sort of ritualized act. And I would say there's that division there. Dana can be entirely spiritual because the higher consciousness is naturally charitable, it's naturally giving, the Satwik consciousness, whereas the Rajasik and certainly the Tamasik state of mind is naturally self-centered, wanting things for oneself, not much prone to showing concern for others there. So, and therefore there can also be the idea that Giving charity is a ritual act. The Mahabharata talks about the different constellations and times of the month when charity should be given, and the rewards that come to a person who gives charity in this ritualized manner. So let's see what Krishna says. And Krishna is aware of this, I think, as he goes through his discussion, his analysis of the threefold divisions of charity. Datavyam iti yaddanam Diyate nupakarine. So, the dana. The first point that Krishna gives, he describes, because he says datavyam iti. When he uses the word iti, often it means inverted commas. So this is the thought, and this is all about the Satwik giving, Satwik charity. The thought in the mind of the person who gives in the Satwik manner is datavyam. And that means simply, this must be given, this should be given. You do it because it's right. You ever seen sometimes, if you do donate charity online, they'll send you a message and it says, what was it that inspired you to give charity today? I suppose they're looking to see if their leaflets or stuff are having an effect. But the answer is datavyam. It should be given. That's why you've given away some money, just because it's right, it's proper, it's the way that human beings should be. It's the elevation, it's the fullness of our humanity. It's what really being human is. And therefore Krishna's, the first thing he says about charity is datavyam iti. This is why it's done. It's done just because it's right and proper. No other reason. You don't need any reason or anything else. It's just done because it should be done. Datavyam iti yaddanam. Diyate anupakarine. Anupakarine means, I think, upakarina means you're seeking something in return. You want, you've got some ulterior motive to your charity. It's the opposite of datavyam iti, because when you give that gift in that way, there's something at the back of your mind. Maybe it's maybe you're just returning a debt. That's not really charity. Or maybe you're thinking, are people watching me? Are people aware of how much I'm giving? Are they admiring me? That also is upakarin. That's a reward that you get. Get my name up on the wall as a great charitable donor. But Krishna says the Sattvik Dhanam is an upakarine. No motive at all. It's just datavyam iti. It's done because it should be done, because it's right, it's proper, it's the highest state of mind. Anupakarine. We don't seek any reward or gain or reputation. Datavyam iti yaddanam diyate nupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha taddanam satvikam smritam. And it's given deshe, at the proper place, in a proper location, not willy-nilly, thoughtlessly. It's carefully done. You think about, where should charity be applied? Where is it most beneficial? Where is it most needed? I mean, we see all around the world now, isn't it? I know my friends at Go Dharmic are working tirelessly in supplying aid to India for the COVID crisis. They're getting oxygen out to people as much as they can, and food relief to those who are troubled in that way there. But that's deshe, thinking carefully. It's not just willy-nilly chucking it around. It's done intelligently. Kale, at the proper time. Deshe kale cha patre cha. Patra means a vessel, that you pour things in, but of course here it means the suitable recipient for the gift. So you don't just dish it out there. What it means is it's calculated, it's thoughtful. Now, the commentators give a ritual dimension to it, where they say deshe means at a tirtha, at a holy spot. Kale means under an auspicious constellation, the right time. And patre means they say to Brahmins and sadhus and people like that, holy persons, etc., but which is a viable interpretation and particularly perhaps relevant at the time when they were writing. But I think in the modern era, Deshe College Patricha means really thinking carefully about where charity is needed most, what time it should be given at, when it should be given, and who is the most needy recipient. And I think that's right. In other words, that Krishna's point is, do it carefully, with consideration, with intelligence, so the most beneficial result can be derived. So, and that's dana, which is Satwik dharma, intelligent charity, giving without any motivation at all, not wishing to build your reputation as a great philanthropist or a minor philanthropist or anything like that, which is again very tempting, isn't it? You know, I mean, that means ideally when you give, do it anonymously, do it so that nobody really knows what you're doing there. So it was a bit tempting to have people know what you give and give you admiration for it. Difficult sometimes because people ask you, how much do you give away? And then you're sort of caught in a quandary. Should I say, or should I just avoid the question? But be careful. Anupakarine. We don't want anything in return. Datavyamiti. I love that phrase there. Just why should we give it? Datavyamiti. It's because it should be done. It's the proper thing to do. Datavyam iti yaddanam diyate anupakarine deshe kale cha patre cha taddanam satvikam smritam. Interesting, Krishna uses the word smriti here. Usually means memory, but clearly the other meaning of smrita is understanding, knowing. So if you come across smriti again in other texts, like I think Patanjali uses it in Yoga Sutras, don't naturally assume that it means memory, because it can also mean understanding or thought processes as well. Okay, so is that right? Where have we got up to now? 6 verses. We've got 8 left in this chapter, haven't we? So we'll try and finish it next week. We've got 2 more verses on dana, on charity, which talk about that charity which is shaped by rajas, charity which is shaped by tamas. Seems a bit odd, but all will be revealed. And then the final 6 verses of this, again, Krishna goes back to talking about ritual, and particularly he uses the mantra Om Tat Sad and analyses its significance in the performance of the Vedic ritual. But we'll try and cover that. Not next week, actually. No, I'm away next week. I'm sorry about that, because I missed last week, and then I'm away next week as well. I'm off travelling again, finding a little bit of peace, quiet and relief outside the city. Sit by a river and watch the Udvega going over the rapids a little bit there. So I'm afraid we won't do it next week, so it'll be a bit disjointed. But after that, hopefully, all being well, I've got a good run for some weeks, and we can really push on into chapter 18, because we're getting quite close to the end of the Gita anyway. Okay, I hope you found it interesting. I found it, all these verses absolutely fascinating, and in some ways I like to think they've sort of